Morality.
Tonight, we talk about the exciting Strange New Worlds finale, and from there, I don't know what's going on or why the screen's not working, but we're also going to talk about Generations and DS9. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back to the Writer Brothers, doing a double dose of transition to make sure that we're all here. I am, of course, your host, P.D. York, joined, as always, by Mr. Corione, Witch in Residence, Mr. Skoglioten, Yoden in Residence, I guess, and Mr. Pollo Zapatos, Shoes in Residence, which makes me something else. We are here, of course, to rave about the Strange New Worlds finale, or say why it sucked. I'm not really sure. Nobody gave me their opinions throughout the week. I just have my own, and I mean, if the musical didn't happen, this probably would have been one of the best seasons of newer Star Trek. Of course, hail out to Disney Sheepherder, and hail to Eddie Arndt. Good to see you. Welcome. Glad you guys are all here. Please feel free to let loose in the comment section. We are the Writer Brothers, of course, so we don't mind reading your paragraphs. Enjoy it while we're small, is what I'm just going to say to that. So yeah, just had a remark recently from our sister community, Super Gamecraft, saying that we should probably rebrand to a Trek and Wars channel, which, as tempting as that is, and while we kind of mostly are by default right now because of all the Super Quest stuff we have that pertains to Star Wars, we're still variety. It's just Star Trek and Wars is what happens to be on right now, and it happens to be what people are getting back into, especially now with the new writers and actors strike that's going to push things back a few years, or not, well, at least a few months for sure, but content's going to slow down, so we'll going to be one to dive back into more classic content anyway, and I'll be straight with you guys. That's probably what this channel is going to be covering a lot of, is classic stuff. Does it happen to be more Star Wars, Star Trek oriented? Of course. John and I grew up with Star Wars. That was our main thing. If Corione was the host, this would probably be a heavy Transformers channel at some point. I'm also not opposed to us becoming a heavier Transformers channel at some point. We just need good Transformers content to talk about. So, no, we're a variety network. That's the nice thing about our name, is that we're not limited to any genre. We talk about writing and the stuff that we love when writing, and a lot of it just happens to be Star Wars and Star Trek. And a lot of our fans seem to be Star Wars and Star Trek fans as well. And so, but we are also open to content suggestions. We will consider them. We might not do all of them, but we will consider them, or at least some specials of them. Nemesis of Eden says, the potential innuendos you just opened up is glorious at PD York. Well, you're welcome for that. That's just, at some point you got to accept that nature is simply nature. People say that all certain art looks provocative, and sure it is, but then you go and see like a certain set of leaves or a canyon carved a certain way, and you're like, what are we going to censor that? Or, that's just happening in nature. It's normal. Get over it. It's just part of life. Without it, we don't exist. So the sooner y'all stop being weird about sexual shit, the better. Or just, learn to have fun in the moment and embrace the ha-ha funny. It's really not that weird when you don't make it weird. Oh, I'm sure. But we've got some pretty fascinating KK news. Now, we have been granted permission by Cameron Pasha to share a specific section of the post. And Corione, if you don't mind cropping it and getting it in an image form so we can display it at the shortly. So, for those of you that have been following our breaking news coverage, you know that we are just eagerly awaiting the official word that KK is out the door. It's going to come when it comes. They're going to announce something at some point. That's what I can definitively say. We know for a fact that as long as the sun continues to rise, things will happen. What things specifically, that's what we don't know. Now, Cameron made a very, and then we just want to zoom in on the last portion, of course, because we don't want to give everything away. If you want to see the whole text, of course, we recommend subscribing to Cameron's Patreon. He is a very good source of not just insider info. That's only part of the fun. The other part is you get an experienced Hollywood writer that gives his insight on not just what he thinks is going on in Hollywood, but his own perspectives on how to write good stories. And it's as a writer myself, I take any writer that wants to impart their wisdom on me. I take that very seriously because, I'm only as good as I can be, and it's better to just learn from people who know what they're doing. Yeah, and it's a fantastic, very respectful, and but you got to remember, it's one of those treat others the way you want to be treated, and this is a very high-class professional decorum environment. This is not your pulpit to preach your personal opinion on stuff, and actually it's required to have a personal opinion if you have others' opinions. Yeah, and that's kind of how we are here on the Writer Brothers. We're not opposed to, if you guys want to share, well, I liked so-and-so and they say this, so we'll consider what they have to say on the matter. But as far as, we want to hear what you think. That's what this whole show is about. Our panelists here, we don't read scripts. We aren't fed, like, Corione isn't told, hey, this week you're going to be the good cop for Disney and I'm going to be the bad cop and we're going to argue. No, our arguments are organic and natural, especially between John and I. It's natural for us. We're brothers, competing for the top spot in our family. And so, that just goes with it. But you're not going to see any... Of course. You're the bad cop that comes off as the good cop. The worst possible cop there is. I knew officers like that, and I couldn't stand them. I'm like, yeah, I want to be nice to you too, but I know deep down you're just going to stab people in the back because you're a piece of... Anyway. The other guys, Nemesis of Eden says, wow, I'm so disillusioned now. Well, hey, there's plenty of other places to... No, I don't want you to go. I'm just kidding, man. Human existence is cringe, bro. That's all I'm gonna say. So you might as well embrace the cringe. The Office did, and look how well that turned out. Oh, can't... That's been the way this whole time. Everyone's just been hearing me speak, so it's a good thing you guys have been quiet most of the time.
All right, well.
Okay, now we can get the show underway. Thank you guys in the comment section for telling me that I'm the only one talking to myself, because that's how much of an ego I apparently have. Jonathan G94 says, I wonder where Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall will flee to. Yep, we're wondering the exact same thing, and so that dives right into the meat and potatoes of this broadcast, which is the Kathleen Kennedy news. So, Corione, now that you can be heard by the world, because I have now given your permission to speak back.
Oh, wow.
I'm such a competent showrunner, I did that on purpose.
May I have my thinking privileges restored too?
Yes. Yeah. See, what I was just saying about there being no yes men, well, of course there's not, because I control you all. I tell you to say no in public, but behind closed doors, these three agree with me, or else.
That's not true. But anyway, do you want to do you want to push this up the way I've got it here?
Yeah, if we can share the... Oh.
Yeah, that's fine.
That wasn't the section that I have.
Oh, what?
It's supposed to just be the last block about the Patreon being noticed by. We could talk about the rest of it, but I only asked specifically for the
then
last
here.
portion.
I can just scroll down, so go for it. Hit it.
Yeah, right about there. If we could zoom in just a little bit more on the and finally portion.
I think I can.
Just
give me one moment here.
Yeah, take your time. I mean, I know we got a lot to cover tonight, but, last week we did so well at getting through it so fast, I'm not really worried about our pacing anymore.
Okay, that's about as good as you're going to get it.
That's perfect. Yeah, and then, right there's good. So, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've been covering this, and it seems like we have people possibly in our audience. We know they've been in Doomcock's audience because they made fun of him in She-Hulk, or at least tried to, very badly and very rudely, in my opinion. But that's another discussion. So we know that they're actually paying attention. But what really stood out to me was not that they're just paying attention, but apparently our dissemination of this information has been to the benefit of what Bob Iger is trying to do in cleaning house. And so this is huge, because this means we actually, for a brief moment right now, have their ear. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to ask that us and on the panel try to be just a little bit more nicer and more respectful in how we deliver our opinions towards these folks, because now we need to see this for the opportunity that it is, and that is to get story ideas, good story ideas from real fans into their ears. Like, if we really want to be serious about, we have a choice to make. We can either take this opportunity and make a point to stand our ideological ground and be no different than those woke idiots, or we could take this opportunity and say, hey, here's our ideas for good storytelling. We'd like you to listen to us, and just leave it at that. So I'm going with that track because I fight forward. I'm not interested in anybody's head at this point. Steven Spielberg gave us the best possible thing with Kennedy. There's no perp walk is going to amount that kind of public, is going to top that kind of public humiliation. And so what's happening at this point is Kennedy's fading away into the background is what they're going to make it look like. And they're going to bring in the new person who's going to be in charge, and she's either going to announce retirement or something, and hopefully it happens by Friday, because they really need to crank up the PR for Ahsoka. And as I put out in a short earlier this week, the one thing to bring people back to Ahsoka next week and possibly smash records, fire Kathleen Kennedy. Or at least announce that she no longer has creative control, and confirm that she had nothing to do with Ahsoka. Once that's confirmed and out there and put into the PR, you're going to get the fans start to come back. That will be enough to give people. Yes, there will be those 5 or 6 cool guys that are like, I'm never coming back to Star Wars again, which good for you. Have fun with that. But we give art a chance regardless. We don't operate with bias on the Ryder Brothers. So
yeah, so here's what I'm going to... So Cameron posted what's been going on with Sparrow over the last little bit, that he's managed to sit down with some people and have some discussions and find out some of the basics. And it more or less equates to Kathleen Kennedy is going to go quietly into the night She's, she's not going to die in some horribly grotesque, burning at the stake kind of thing. She's just going to fade away.
Wizard
And
of Oz.
yeah, I mean, as much as I would enjoy that, sadly we're not going to get it. But she is going to be heading out, and even the horsemen have admitted that they are going to be heading out soon. And when they head out, they're going to be naming the interim president and making sure that that gets out there into the news. How soon that's coming, we don't know. I've been noticing that Sparrow tends to predict about 3 months or so ahead of where the actual events occur at. So, I mean, if that gives you a timeline, that should give you a timeline there, right? The other piece that I thought that was very interesting from Sparrow's latest post, that, I thought was really kind of cool, actually, is that, so for a long time, there's been a group of people that have seemed to always have these inside sources that kind of showed up. Apparently, there's been a insider influencer program. The basic idea is that certain people would be leaked certain information and they would be the gatekeepers inside of everywhere.
Yeah.
And it turns out that that was a legit program, and that they're going to be phasing it out in favor of putting out individuals that are going to go around to the YouTube channels to actually communicate directly to the fans. So they're going to have some sort of, kind of roaming community influencer, or like roaming community member that's going to go out and say, for example, say to Doomcock, hey, I'd love to come on your channel and talk Lucasfilm. I'm an employee. I can give you guys the official information of what's going on. Which, when you think about it, is really the smart way to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I want to say, to touch on what I was saying earlier. That's why we want to make sure that the Writer Brothers is a welcoming environment for any of these guys to at least come and speak honestly. And, but we will say that while this panel is not opposed to following certain decorum and certain rules, we are not going to put any restrictions on our comment section from our fans directly. So we aren't going to censor, unless it's like, profanities and people wishing ill will. Obviously, we don't allow that to begin with, but that's
any respectful,
any well-articulated comment, no matter how, potentially offensive or hard or rough as it may be, we're not going to censor those. But as hosts, we do have to hold ourselves to a little bit of a higher standard in some of the questions we ask. And like I said,
as hosts of people in general, like, we're just good to our guests.
Exactly.
That's just a guaranteed thing with us. It's something we all hold on, like, dear to our individual hearts and to our individual households. So, like, I think that's what we're really trying to say when we, like, offer our like audience and offer our time to anybody from Lucasfilm that wants to come on. Like, our opinions are our opinions, and like, we also do know our place. Like, we know we're not in there learning the like nitty gritty, learning the corporate speak, learning the employee handbook. So like, if our comments come off as like third party out of left field,
yeah,
they are.
The goal of this channel is not to
take offense from people that are legitimately sitting in the outfield judging you.
Yeah,
like. We do have opinions about writing that aren't out of left field or third party. Those are honest critiques. But like, our opinion of your operations, they are still without the knowledge or true knowledge of your operation.
Yeah, we don't do personal attacks on this channel. No panelist here is it's. The expectation is that, while I won't judge anybody's personal issues, at the same time, we do hold ourselves to a high standard that we don't attack anybody. Now, if somebody attacks us and we go on the defensive, yeah, we're going to hold our ground. We don't roll over. We're not pushovers. We're not yes men.
The motto of the show, bringing respect back to discourse, right?
Yeah. Respect begets respect, and so everybody gets a fair chance. And also, you know what? If stuff starts to snowball or deteriorate, we can always take a quick deep breath and discuss something else, and then see if we can resume the discussion. We are not required to get an answer to play the legal. We don't play the gotcha game on this network. Let's just say that. We're not.
No, look, if
Well,
I think honestly, if we got
enough research
Hmm?
to find out about your hidden mistress.
yeah, I mean, look, and I'll be honest with you, if we had a person from Lucasfilm come on here, I think 90% of the discussion would relate to, you know, what the internal rules are for the Force, right? Like when you guys are writing, you know, something, what are your internal rules for it? What are the internal rules for, you know, what equipment the rebels are allowed, right?
Are there
Mhm.
rules? If not, why not? Can we,
Well, and that's just it. It's
consult
okay.
on that a little bit? Can we do an episode where we spend the whole episode consulting about that with the audience as well?
And then if we're going to
And just-
change the rules or put in a new concept, we need to have that articulated, and it needs to be explained, and it needs to make sense. Because I get it. There was a time before the nuclear age when people were like, you know, the atomic bomb is impossible. And, well, how long did that last? Or flying, even before then. You know, the fact that it's funny that flight came from bicyclists, but
Even the nuclear age, people were like, all these nuclear reactors, they're gonna go off like atom bombs, and it was like, no, they're a completely different
And now,
experiment.
you're right. And now it turns out, after watching the way that the fires behaved in Canada and all the smoke, well, that was all terrible, that nuclear fallout may also, but nuclear winter might even be a myth too. The point is, we have plenty of real-life examples that the rules change all the time. So it's not that you
And
can't
that we
change the
don't
rules.
know all of them.
It's not that you can't change the rules, but you need to have something more than just, well, the plot needs this, as we're
and
going to get
ultimately-
into with Generations.
And ultimately, you need to know the rules to break the rules,
There you go.
right?
To break them
Yeah.
effectively and in a way that doesn't insult the canon or destroy what's established.
Well, and it's one of the best things that like Marvel used to have with it is like they would mess with time to some degree, right? Like bringing in stories and backstories that hadn't been told yet. But it used to be choreographed and organized with a series of rules. And nowadays, the rules aren't being followed, and the new stuff doesn't want to go too far, but already went too far and doesn't remember where home is anymore.
Exactly.
That's
there
it.
you
And
go.
so, like, that's what rules do, though. Like, we all get it. You want to be a rebel, so do we, so are we. We're literally starting an independent critique where we're actually honest about our feelings and we're not supported by anybody. We're just
Like-
doing this our way, and then our viewers are like, yeah, we kind of like that.
It's
And we
like
love
in
you guys
music, you
for
can
it. We
step
appreciate it
outside
so
of the
much.
scales, but you always got to come back to the root note to resolve it.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly. Like, and that's what the thing about like classic Trek that I've been realizing as we've watched Deep Space Nine, it really shows is that like every fifth or seventh episode is like, here's mundane rule following episode.
Yep.
And you just get, oh yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. That's what good is, casual dining is. And then it back into the quiet and the wild and the fun, and it gets all off the path, and that's where it breaks all the rules again,
Yep.
and then it comes back.
And
And that I feel like is what was lost with the 10 episode series, because
Yeah.
like every seventh episode is supposed to be the climax, but it's also supposed to be a light home base visit.
Hail to you at Dahlia Lightwood. Welcome. Glad to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, no, it's just so yeah. Don't expect a huge humiliate. We've already seen the humiliation of Kathleen Kennedy. She will now be responsible for the biggest box office bomb in Hollywood history, and
Again.
she's already
That
been.
thing with Spielberg.
She
on
got
the
bitch
stage
slapped, yeah, exactly, by Spielberg, which then caused her to not clap for John Williams, thus exposing her as the horrible piece of human garbage she
Well,
really
okay,
is.
I'm gonna give you. I can't believe I'm doing this because, man, I despise that woman. But I'm gonna say this for Kathleen Kennedy: the reason why she probably didn't clap for John Williams was because she was so shocked that her narcissism wasn't fed by everybody else that she just didn't know what to do. So
Short.
I am probably
it was
that
a
is
short
probably
circuiting.
exactly how it is. But I'm still gonna read into it the way I want to because it's John Williams, no excuses. Doesn't matter.
Fair.
If my cat was killed in front of me and I was like, and now John Williams. Okay. Anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But
This is the worst day ever.
But it's John Williams. I have to clap. Yeah. So if there isn't going to be a major perp walk. There isn't going to be. The humiliation's already been happening. At this point, what we are waiting for is enough confirmation that she has no power. Once it's confirmed in the public eye that she is retiring or moving on, whatever, we promise to make up for the lack of perp walk. We will go live with our celebration party of just being over the top, gloating, excited. Okay? So you can count on your Kathleen Kennedy's career is over celebration to be held
We'll get up
here.
on the road council. We'll call in some Ewoks.
Yeah.
We got this.
Exactly.
We'll have Grays on the panel, like you name it. Everyone in the galaxy will be thrilled about
The rebellion has won again.
Right. No, it's and especially if it's Filoni, or not Filoni, excuse me, if it's Favreau that's getting the captain seat, okay. Because we all saw what happened with Mando. Huh?
It'll be Favreau.
Yeah, we all saw what happened with Mando season 1 and 2, some of the best Star Wars to ever grace us. And now we have live action Rebels, which we've almost finished up our Rebels rewatch. And man, I forgot what a great, just fantastic show that is. Like, if you guys haven't seen the best Star Wars Disney has produced, no, it is better. Even as an animated show, story-wise, it is better than all of the live action Disney Wars products. At least so far, and highly recommend. But we were just waiting for the day. Like I said, we will have that breaking news celebration when the time comes and it's confirmed. We're hoping like this Friday, because like I said, if you want the fans in for Ahsoka, you say that Kathleen is retired by Friday, you will probably have a huge surge that Tuesday night, because people will be curious to see if it's actually got that real Star Wars feel. You know, like I played Jedi Outcast for the first time in a while last night with cheats, and I streamed it because my power supply unit is failing. And it managed to hold out just fine, but I realized playing that game, it's got that real, authentic Star Wars feel. That's why that game, despite its lack of hang feature, is so timeless. But John, you actually had a quick segment you wanted to talk about regarding the gaming industry as a whole. And so why don't you go ahead and touch on that for the next, and then about 10 minutes, we got to start getting into Star Trek.
Yeah, so my big thing is, and it applies to Kathleen's walk, like, I understand that Favreau, if he is the pick, like, what he's done so far is, credit to where he's at. Like, obviously he can manage a team, and management is just management. It's like, the way I've been noticing it and what I've been hearing a lot lately in the media and just in my sourcing on YouTube of like stories about gaming industry is a lot of marketing executives are being promoted to management executives in terms of like operational managers, in terms of development managers, team managers in general, just because they have management experience and credibility in the form of marketing has views. Like, in terms of marketing, you don't judge it by dollars brought in, you judge it by views. And with modern technology, you can just increase views to the billions, right? Like, somebody can watch the Diablo ad 1 million times and they can actually record that. Whereas like Nielsen videos, you could tell that people watched if they had a Nielsen video attached. And so you were getting a general average of a sample size of people's lives, right? But nowadays you can get literal interactions, and that's what's led to this huge surge in data mining and all of those other things. But now those people are getting told that they're smart enough to run the whole thing. Like, their whole job is to go out and collect data and not make money, but spend money to get more information on people. And now you just want to put them in charge of all those people with all that information. Like, that's why we have this huge decline in everything. It's like those people literally are focused only on brands And so they're like, let's have a pizza party. Let's have a great Friday. We're going to cut everybody out of here early. But remember, you're all hourly, so you just lost 4 hours of your pay. Sorry about that, but not, because I just saved us money. Hashtag marketing for the win again. Like, it's exhausting. Like, people talk about the toxic market, and that's truly where it is. Is like the wrong people are in charge. And I think that if Disney's going to do anything right, what they're going to do is they're going to return to putting creatives in charge of creatives, and then putting accountants in charge of accounting, and then having those accountants actually talk to the people that are in charge and just do their jobs. Like, accountability is all you really need, and then inspect what you expect, guys. But like, marketers don't know much past goldfish thinking. They're only thinking 5 seconds, and when you make all your movies 5-second interactions, we get what we've got. It's exhausting.
Well, I mean, and look, when you say putting, look, the bean counters are also important here too, right? Because you can't, what's happened when we've let creatives get, just be in charge of creatives, is we wind up situations with budgets being completely overblown, and we get amazing, like, quality stuff,
yeah, but spare no
but
expense.
It doesn't make money, right?
Well, okay,
Yeah,
so in that
The budgets
essence,
that just got rocks in their heads. It's crazy.
the funniest thing is, like, there's a real world example that every company, especially any international conglomerate, can benefit from, and that's the military. Like, the United States military, they don't care at all about the money. They lose billions of dollars every single year.
Not about the money.
But at their local units, like every unit I served with, we were penny pinchers. We counted everything. And I personally have to like quantify and find all of the documentation necessary to make sure equipment was where it belonged and was delivered to where it was supposed to be delivered. And it was all quantified down to that level. Like, at the top, they lost all the money, just like they do at every corporation, it seems, these days. But at the lower levels, if you give them responsibility over themselves and then also just give them a guidebook that the accountants come in and inspect that they're following, like, that's all it is. Just hold everybody accountable from there. Let the wild be wild, and then be like, okay, but you still have to ask this guy for money. You still have to go ask Mr. like Button Up if you can actually, pay for this. And he has to say, no, you can't afford it, or no, prove that it's worth it first. And then you do. And if you can sell him, you won, and that's justified. And now you've got your checks and balances.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's what all I'm suggesting is that we need checks and balances in play. We have to have a decent balance between keeping budgets tight so that things will make money and keeping creatives free to create.
Yeah.
And it's a delicate balancing job. I don't think anyone here would argue that it isn't, right? But it's super important that it happens, because you can have an amazing movie that doesn't make any money, and conversely, you can have an amazing movie that, while it makes a lot of money, is reviled everywhere, right?
Yeah.
We've seen both those extremes from Disney, but the best movies are always the ones that fit kind of in between, where they've got like a tight, hungry budget, which forces them to innovate, but the creatives are allowed to really get creative.
Well, and on top of that, like, that's where this like strike is really at its, like, you want to answer the strike, give these people some, job security by encouraging them to participate on 3 or 4 pilots or 3 or 4 movies where they all try their best, and whichever ones win, if they want to stay on that project, they get guaranteed a part 2.
Yeah.
Right? Or a part 3 and 4. And then from there, all you're doing is betting on winners, which is the same thing the NBA does. It's the same thing all sports is giving your players a chance to play, your writers a chance to write, finding out where their strengths are by testing them against the audience. Because I think obviously we found out marketing is wrong. And like it isn't working. The hate things didn't work. The just constant rebranding of old stuff didn't work. The constant relaunching of already successful media didn't work. Like,
And then reward the winners.
exactly. And then, yeah, the self-aggrandizing, pretending like you're actually doing good, like pretending you're doing it all for a cause that you don't actually stand up for or actually do anything for. And then all at the same time, just being like, we don't know why this isn't working. Like, you're literally 75 different faces because you won't just be true and just be honest. Like, you can't handle it. No one can. Tyranny has never worked ever. Monopoly never ever works. Like, it's just feudalism with extra steps, right? Like, stop being the lord of your empire, lord of your kingdom, and start delegating authority and decentralizing your authority. Like, set guidelines at the top, make all the money at the top, and take all the credit at the top. Awesome. But also stop constantly micromanaging everything. Instead, pick good managers, train better managers, have those managers train their replacements, and then send all those people out to manage, and then let your creatives create, your accountants account, and everybody makes money, because that's how functional systems work, is everybody has a role. You do all of the roles, and you manage and inspect.
Happy workers are productive workers, and that is a proven concept time and time again. And it's never going to change. And
guided, educated workers are the happiest workers.
Right, and that's why they tried to put out that BS of, oh, you need to be grateful for what you have. Someone in third world bullshit country has it worse. I don't care. I do not care. I don't live in third world bullshit country.
You should be
I live
grateful
here.
that we're not burning everything down and we're asking nicely.
Exactly. We should all want a better standard of living for everybody.
Period.
Like, that's not selfish to want a better standard of living for everyone all around. And it's ridiculous that corporations got away with convincing a couple of generations that was an acceptable way of thinking, and it was not. Anyway, moving on to better times. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is a very strange show. Not just in a Star Trek sense, very much strange in a Star Trek sense, but also just strange in a show sense as well. Had a lot of really good high moments this whole season. And now not so much. But, you know, if you skip that particular episode, I think you got a really promising season of Star Trek in front of you that can potentially go places for a third season. But holy crap, do we need 20 episodes. 10 is way too short. Now let's quickly go around the room. We can give our overall review of this episode and then quickly of the series. So for me, this episode did exactly what it needed to. It took risks that I didn't expect it to, and I'm ready for season 3. So solid 7 ending for me. Season's gonna get a 5 out of 7 overall though, because I just could see somebody watching that musical and never wanting anything to do with Star Trek again, and I wouldn't blame them. And it's just bad. It's not a good thing. I don't want to promote it. I want to talk about the musical if we can avoid it, please. So, Corion, you seem eager to talk about Strange New Worlds.
Wait,
you
want to address Dahlia Lightwood first?
Sure. Oh, no, first we have to actually address Nemesis of Eden. Because he's leaving. So thank you, Nemesis of Eden, for popping in. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your night.
Night,
Scogli,
Nemesis.
give him a nice pat on the back for all of us when you
Will
get a
do.
chance. All right, go ahead with Dahlia.
Oh, no, you got it.
Where? What are we specifically addressing?
Just,
I mean, I know she was talking about Indy 5, which, I mean, I don't have a hard opinion.
They wrote in. I figured we would address their writing in. I thought they were talking about the episode. That is.
Talking about some bad CGI. Bunch of
this is
people
how
standing in a
horrible
row.
Indy
There's a
5
stunt.
is, and it was just more proof as to why Kathleen Kennedy is not is actually basically radioactive in Hollywood right now. So, and it's like, yeah, and it's really sad that's no. The first thing we do is we get a new Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford, just young Indy on the big screen. Doesn't matter as long as his last performance is with dignity and respect, not. Anyway, so Corion, Strange New Worlds. And
So-
actually, you know what? Let me say real quick, Dahlia, nothing against what you're saying at all. We appreciate every contribution that every comic here gets because that does help boost interest. And so your long novels are absolutely welcome. It would be a little weird to call ourselves the Writer Brothers and then complain about people taking full advantage
Writing.
of 200 characters.
All right. So I know I've got issues with this episode, this finale.
Okay.
But, and this is going to sound weird, but I'm not exactly sure what they are. If that makes any sense. Like, I know I didn't like it, but I'm not entirely certain why.
It's I think it's more you want to, but you are on the fence and you need proof one way or the other. That's what I heard
like,
just now.
It's something like that. Because on one hand, this episode opens very, very strong. I absolutely love how it opens. We're getting like this nice scene, and then we get the Gorn invasion, and you know it rings of classic Trek episodes. It rings of TNG episodes. Well done there. Okay, really liked that. And then we get the whole nonsense of, you know, trying to slip past the Gorn and trying to sort all this out. And I do get it, right? Like it does work, but it just feels clunky, right? Ortega's piloting a shuttle covered in junk. We saw that. It's the Serenity movie. You know, we've been here, okay?
All they needed for that was just like a frame of her holding a pad with like Firefly and she was watching it or something.
Yeah, or her saying I'm a leaf on the wind.
Just
right?
a little reference would have been, you know what, whatever, use it. Because that's
Right.
that's when I'm okay with people ripping off concepts, is when you make a clever remark to where you're borrowing it from.
All you needed is her putting the garbage on there and pretending to be the mounted gunner for a second.
Yeah, like it was one of those moments. Like it felt not right. Okay. And I mean, part of it was also that as soon as they said there were sporadic pockets on the Farragut of like sections with oxygen, sections with life support, I'm like, oh, so Chapel's alive.
No,
right?
wasn't it the well, yeah,
Or
I forgot what the
whatever
ship
the name
was
of the
called.
ship
Yeah.
was.
Not
right?
the Enterprise.
Yeah, the other
Not
ship.
the Serenity.
You know, like I sat there and I immediately went,
Kyoga?
oh, so yeah, the Kyoga, yeah.
USS Redshirt.
Yeah. You know, but as I was like, oh, so she's going to be alive, right? And, you know, when so there's those moments where you kind of sit there going like, okay, I know they were trying to do something novel here, but every moment they tried to build suspense, I saw clean through a mile away. And I think that's where my problem was. Like, if you're going to build suspense, you need to have
Deal
something
with characters that
suspenseful
aren't
happen.
alive in the
Yeah.
other series that happens later.
All right,
Right.
all right.
And that's why the ending actually works for me.
Eh.
Yeah.
Because if you noticed, every single one of the characters that is in the that you know their ending is slightly ambiguous are the ones that are seen in trouble at the end.
Yeah.
So that works, but
Yeah.
it felt disjointed to me. It felt like I could see where a lot of this was coming from. The fact that we've got Montgomery Scott to
Oh.
me says, what?
Oh, we are not in spoiler territory.
Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry, guys. Please have my comments stricken from the record. But,
Yeah,
I'll advise the jury to ignore the previous comment.
So all right,
Thank
let's
you.
just get John and Scogli real quick, and then we
yeah,
can get into
let's
spoilers.
do that.
Dude, I'm really bummed I didn't actually get to watch this. I listened to the whole episode, but
Oh.
I didn't get to actually tune in and see anything. It looked like it could be really cool to watch, so I'm gonna have to rewatch it. But like, Corin, I don't think you had a problem with it because everything was obvious in terms of like obvious. It was more obvious in terms of they said everything. Literally everything you were complaining about, I was like, yeah, they were talking way too much. And it was like every plan they had just worked. And it was like, okay, guys, you can't be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I've got it. Eureka 7 times in a row. Like, you Eureka'd too many times. You've Eureka'd all over me.
Yeah. And thank you, Dahlia, for informing that the show hasn't been ruined from your viewership. We appreciate that. It's just we do have a formula for new content we like to stick to, which is we want to give our viewers who are watching but haven't had a chance to see it yet, but want to get our opinions, our initial, is it going to be worth my time? Because some people don't have time to watch every episode. Like that's we're here for you guys, the viewer. So if there's adjustments we can make to maybe help you guys out, any content we can add, please let us know. Send your suggestions at thewriterbrothers@gmail.com, and we'll put them in the shredder. Or, consider them seriously. No, we will. Because that's the audience. We aren't going to grow an audience if we don't at least, shape a little bit of what we're trying to do, but also keep it within our principles and what our goals are. So to help facilitate that is for people who just want a quick non-spoiler overview, man, those would make for good shorts material. That's what this is for. So yeah, quickly, Scogli, why don't you do that, and then we'll go to spoilers.
This episode's a banger. I loved it.
I would have loved it more if there wasn't a musical. That's what I'll say. All right, anything else for non-spoilers?
Sweet. I'm good.
All right,
let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's tear into this one.
The Gorn looks awesome.
That's so the biggest complaint, of course, with Strange New Worlds was changing the canon of the Gorn, which, on the one hand, I can see where the complaints come from. On the other hand, take it up with Enterprise, because Enterprise Season 4 already set the precedent for changing of the Gorn, and that was basically why we have, it's just a nonchalant STO Gorn pun right there. And that's why we have what we've got. So I would have preferred if they did call them a different species, or maybe something that is closely in name to like I don't know, the Ridley Scottus or whatever, to reference aliens or something. Just something like that would have been cool. Or if it's like a species of Gorn that's specially mutated and can only reproduce this way, and they're probably all going to be killed off before Kirk takes over, and that's when Kirk discovers the new Gorn. Doesn't really matter because it doesn't change the TOS canon whatsoever. And as we're going to get into with the Generations discussion, Roddenberry Trek already has been Roddenberry Trek ended in 1994. So that's just a simple fact. But we'll get into that. So that's just my biggest gripe. Putting that aside, watching the episode for what it is, taking in the story, taking in the character interaction, I felt that everything was pretty good, and there were certain suspensions and churns. I felt that Scotty's introduction was the best that we have ever possibly seen for something like this. Like, I love the 2009 Scotty in his introduction. This one, he felt more like Doohan's young Scotty. When the instant that he came out and started talking, I was like, no way.
It's like, an actual Scottish
and
person.
he got the essence of Scotty. He is basically young Scotty.
The amazing compare and contrast between watching Generations and listening to this episode within the same hours of each other today. Like, this dude was money and perfectly voiced, but equally intelligent. Like, one of the things that a lot of shows make fun of Scotty for is he's always it's always beam me up, Scotty, or I just can't do it, Captain. And it's he does say that a lot, but they're also running away from a lot of things. So it's kind of like Scooby-Doo saying "rut row raggy," he just can't do it because he's giving it all she's got. But at the same time, this episode showed him I just figured if I did these things because I saw what they were doing and I figured out. And then I was watching him in Generations, and that was the exact same way his brain was working. And the way he talked about it too. He just ignored all formality, just straight talked about what his thought process was, ignoring that other people would be like, you could think like that during this? And he's like, oh yeah, I had to survive. And they're like, that's your survival mind? and it was really good. It was awesome. It was so fun. And that was, I think, the part that like made it really good. The part that pissed me off, and I think this is one of the reasons you didn't like it, Corion, was Hemmer's reference, where they were just like, Hemmer did it before, like they were trying to say that it was okay. And I was glad that like even the Captain Pike didn't let that go. He's like, no, even Hemmer should have given us time. Like, it was stupid. We have the technology. We would have figured it out. And he didn't.
Well, okay, look, here's my piece on the Scotty situation, and I feel like this is valid. The problem with bringing Scotty in is we have just barely gotten to know Pella, right? Like the current engineer. And you just know the arrival of Scotty means every other engineer is done, right? Like, we are not good. Yeah, like, Pella's gone.
I really
whether
enjoy
Pella
that.
is
He's like
gone,
I think
my
I was so
worst student.
I
my
think I was
best
already
student with the worst grade.
I guess the Enterprise at this stage is just a revolving door for chief engineers until it gets the right one, because I'm just like, the precedent was already set for treating your chief engineer like crap and giving him no development with season 1. That they just do it again, that I'm like, you might screw it. You might as well just put Scotty on the ship and put him in the position, because why bother? You guys obviously don't care to develop the chief engineer if it's going to be somebody else. You've obviously just wanted to get to Scotty anyway. So let's just go with it from here, because we know he's not going to get booted off, as far as we know, unless they decide to throw some, crazy, Scotty's family gets killed and he has to transfer off for 10 years or so. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think Scotty's still young. I don't think he's going to get promoted to chief. I think if anything, they're going to give him more of like a Lamar role, and they're going to pull from the Orville and give Scotty a more adventure exploration experience before he decides to stick with the Enterprise and fall in love with it. And I think that's, if they're smart, and because of the writer's strike, we know they haven't written season 3. So, here's an idea, right?
Actually, they would have already written.
Yeah, I thought
3.
it was already in production like it was with season 1, because that's some of the dispute I've been having with other anti-New Trek people, is they're trying to pass blame onto channels like us for endorsing Picard season 3. And the truth of the matter is, none of whether or not we covered Picard season 3 or not would have made zero difference, because Strange New Worlds season 2 was already filming while season 1 was streaming. So the musical, all this stuff was already, there's no changing that. So what we can have effect on, of course, is the rebranded Star Trek Discovery.
Season 1. And whether or not we have an effect on it is irrelevant. We want to have an effect on it. And so if we can have an effect, and I hope they do go back, we've been hearing about reshoots all the time. And I think that in the case of, if they do actually, cave and start paying their writers a living wage so that their writers can live near work and be less stressed about, eating, then maybe, their writers will be able to write more quality content. And in that time, they'll want to do rewrites and reshoots. And in that essence, I really do hope that, what they can do with this engineer, that they are at a breaking point. They could one-off her, and then we just get a track record for it. And then it's okay, thanks for bringing us Scotty, but now which characters else need to get picked off? When is Pike going to get piped off? I mean, picked off. Right?
In 10 years. Or I think 9 now, but...
Well, where's the time dilation? Are they going to skip ahead at any point? Theoretically...
From what it sounds like, they want to try and get this to go a full Trek 7 if they can. And right now, they're definitely on track to get at least 7 seasons, I think. Because, the show is, while it has its problems, and we've certainly had our issues with it, this season showed a lot of vast improvement over the first season. So
overall, the first 2 seasons ranked pretty high amongst the first 2 seasons of any Star Trek show.
That I will give it. That I will definitely give it. That this... I would argue that it really, whether we like the footing or not, it did find its feet in very short order.
And up until
Bro.
the musical, it wasn't any more cringe than Orville season 1 or 2 either.
Oh.
Like, people forget, like, Orville season 1 and 2. Orville season 1 was a little rough. Like, it
The
was
first
Family
3
Guy in
episodes of
space.
season 1 are.
They're you
I
know, that
love
third episode is where it really
season
starts to
one.
go serious, but it's
I love Orville season 1 too.
I do too.
I love all 3 seasons, but like season 1 and 2, I love that just fast, witty banter. And like in space, like they never claim to be the flagship. They never claim to be the
Well, it's 'cause they're
most
not.
honorable and fancy.
They're like the least.
They're
It's
they're
Exactly,
Star
and that's
Trek
what I
the other
love about
guys.
the Family Guy. Exactly, and I love that, and
I did
I
too.
still do love it. And so, like for me, this series is where they are the flagship, and I like the fact that like in this one being the flagship, it's still having baffles, but finally like maintaining decorum. Whereas like last season they just were a bunch of teenagers on a spaceship. This season they have been all adults. Even during the musical, it got out of hand in terms of like logic and words, but it didn't get out of hand in terms of like military decorum. And that,
They've improved the Ortega's character like dramatically.
Yeah.
Dramatically. Like, I actually like this character now.
No, and I like that
You know,
they
Pike
did. They
isn't so much
flexed.
of everybody's dad as he is captain of a ship, so he's a lot more
Yeah.
Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow.
I also
and
like.
less dad.
I also like how they reestablished their professionalism with the Lower Decks crossover of all episodes. Like, for one, Boimler got to basically be the role of the fanboy that knows all the history, being shocked by these twists, only to find out there's some hidden history behind it. And then, of course, there's Mariner that's, behaving like she's from, the 25th century, only to be reminded, no, this isn't our ship. This isn't our generation. We're not Lower Decks right now. We're on the flagship of the Federation in some of its, most important days. And so it was very good
Mariner
for that.
got very much your
You
mom's
know what-
not the captain.
You know what the Lower Decks crossover episode did? Okay. There's this concept where really, where girls that are like, a 7 on the 10 to 10 scale will find another girl that's like a 2 so that they look hotter by comparison.
Yeah.
That's what the crossover did. Okay? Petey's laughing, but he knows it's the truth.
But the difference is, okay, that would be a better analogy if they somehow used Discovery as a comparison, which I guess kind of in a way they did, but
They have!
but
But the worst part about that is I was going to say that about the current engineer as being a rebound engineer.
That's even better, right?
But
like,
I'm also gonna be honest though, like, I actually still like Lower Decks, believe it or not. I do actually find the show enjoyable, and even season 3 started to shift more. Okay, yeah, we're gonna be like the Rick and Morty Adult Swim Star Trek, but here's the thing, guys, there's an audience for that. And oh no, people that wouldn't have normally given Star Trek a try are gonna give Star Trek a try, and then there's a chance they might actually try the rest of Star Trek, because here's the thing, whether you like it or not, we've got a lot of new fans that are finding classic Trek because of Discovery.
yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. And that's what you got to take. That's the big picture that you got to take away. And that's why I'm also, we're going to really get into it here with Generations, and why I'm going to point out, guys, the filth started in 1994. That is where Star Trek just decided to go multiverse expansion, into, we're just going to nuke the fridge at that point, because magical nexus bullshit is going to save us now. And if we're going to accept that, then Discovery was inevitable. And it sucks, but at the same time, we've seen how bad it can get. We've been there. Now we can keep moving away. And that's what Strange New Worlds has been doing, is we're moving away. I think season 3, I hope we can get 20 episodes, is going to come in very, very strong, because, man, what a risk to take with that cliffhanger.
Well, we'll
on a
see,
season
right? Because,
2.
I can, based on the writing of this episode, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen in the premiere, right?
Yeah.
They tried to cliffhanger this, and it's no cliffhanger, right? This is the anti-cliffhanger.
Some people
because
were
they
like,
telegraphed everything that they're gonna do.
yeah, some people were like, oh, this is best of both worlds energy, and I'm like,
No, this is the opposite of
No.
best of both worlds. This is the least of multiple worlds. Because here's what's gonna happen, and I'll tell you what's gonna happen. Okay? It's real simple. Scotty's
Scotty.
what?
Scotty's gonna Scotty.
Well, Scotty's gonna take his transponder doohickey that, is not a cloak for Gorn, and they're gonna hook it up to a shuttlecraft, and they're gonna take that shuttlecraft to go rescue their people. And Pella and Scotty are gonna be working on that ship, or something's gonna happen to Scotty, so he's stuck on the Enterprise while she's on the shuttle. They're gonna get over. They're gonna get their people. While they're getting their people, Pike's love interest is going to take a turn for the worst because she can't be allowed to survive. That there are a lot of reasons why she can't be allowed, and something will happen, and Pella will wind up in a bad way, and she'll pass the torch on to Scotty. I taught you everything you need to know. You're going to be fine. She's gonna, Pike's gonna go, well, we need a new chief engineer, and Mr. Scott happens to be here, so congratulations, you're hired. And they're going to get the principal actors for most of the crew back. I mean, if somebody wants out, they've now got their exit potential. I'm going to say that if they do lose anybody, they'll lose one other person. But Pella's gone for sure. And Pike's love interest is going to take a turn for the worse. They're going to wind up having to kill her. Chapel's going to be the one that has to wind up doing it because that was telegraphed ahead of time too. And when she does it, Pike's going to, have some very hard feelings towards the female of the species, which is going to lead inevitably to the way he starts the original Trek pilot episode where he's kind of down on women. And he's ready to, but, he meets a girl and is ready to love again. This is all setting up, all roads in Strange New Worlds lead to Talos 4, right? Like, all of them do, and I can see the pieces being slotted into play here. And, we're going to get that. We're going to get Ortega's actually being decent now because they've realized that, her being the hotshot pilot who has too much lip didn't quite work. But her being the hotshot pilot that's a veteran and is haunted by the stuff she's seen works.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to
have a snarky quip for absolutely every single order given.
Right.
That's gone. Completely gone.
Because they've realized that giving her a little bit of a darker edge, giving her a little bit of a more shadowy backstory works. And it absolutely does. I will say that if they keep that up, the character will probably make it into, the top 15 of characters on Trek. Probably be one of my, my pick for helmsman. That being said, I mean, I guess the best way to put it, all-star bridge crew.
The Jimi
casting.
Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix of helmsman.
Well, no, because everybody has their dream team, if they were going to pick people from different Star Treks, right? For
Not
their dream,
anymore.
their fantasy bridge team, if you will. Ortegas is going to be the pilot on my fantasy bridge team, right? If they keep her going in this direction. But that's what's going on here, right? That's what they're all setting up so that at any point they're going to be able to end it with a Talos 4 remake of the original pilot and be able to get an out, but they've got to get every character to the point where that will make sense. And I honestly think that Mbenga, if he isn't gone by the end of season 3, will be gone by the end of season 4 and replaced by the guy that they eventually replaced Bones with. Or Bones replaces. Yeah. So
all right. Well,
if
you hate Strange New Worlds, then I'm going to tell you why and where it all began. Because of our DS9 watch through, and because of this topic coming up of where did all of Star Trek go wrong, I figured that with the beginning of Season 4 and with certain important plot points that are mentioned in the beginning of Season 4, Way of the Warrior, we needed to bust out Star Trek Generations to precede that discussion. And lo and behold, as I was watching last night, I found that it's absolutely the point, the definitive end of Roddenberry Star Trek. The reason being is because I am an observer. I'm the quiet guy in the room that's always watching, always listening, always hearing you display yourself and your weaknesses. What I mean by that is when I'm, listening to opinions and feedback of Star Trek, what I like to look for is consistency. I like to look for the stuff that matters. And while some people like to flip-flop their opinions often, typically for emotional reasons, I do respect the ones that are open to nuance and evidence and change their opinion based on that. And of course, that's basically what we do here, is we try to change and convince each other's minds with our personal reasons, not like, you gotta like it or else you're a slur of the week here. No. So in doing so, I've decided to apply the Roddenberry idealism and take all of the complaints and see, okay, where all these precedents are set. And honestly, the moment that we can agree where real Star Trek ends is with Generations. And the biggest sin that I hear complain about is that there's the whole erasure of the past, because that's supposedly the woke agenda, is to delete all of the stuff that came before. And so if we're gonna, go with based off of that logic, the moment that the TNG crew is killed on screen is exactly in line with the complaints that people have with newer Star Trek killing off the past, so to speak. And so that's it right there. So the crew that you see at the end of All Good Things, they all die. Because what happens is Picard is taken off to magical fairy bullshit land, and then he comes back in time to change things. This creates a new timeline. This is where the Roddenberry timeline essentially, we can say, ends, because Roddenberry's also passed on from this world and can't decide what's canon, what isn't canon, whereas George Lucas still can. And so that's why it's like, if we're going to have these standards of what Star Trek is, then we need to go back and see where it all falls apart, and that's it. So Generations onward is pretty much where Roddenberry's Star Trek is locked in, and it doesn't go away, okay? It's never going to go away. You watch those movies and they're timeless. There's a reason Picard Season 3 drew a lot of inspiration from TOS Season 4, also known as Star Treks 1 through 6. It's because the story is still good. The ideas are still true. That I can watch Star Treks 1 through 6 right now and be as happy as can be because they're great movies. Yes, even 5. For all of its problems and bad execution, the story of 5, a lot of good moments of 5 are still a lot better than what we get in the TNG movies and what we get in a lot of the stuff that takes place in what I call the Enterprise timeline. Separate discussion, of course, when we do decide to watch Enterprise. So that's it, and that's really what the problem. And the problem, of course, is that that's not the only thing. It's like at the end of All Good Things, the TNG crew is on top of their game. We get into this movie, and as things unfold like an average TNG episode, or like a really good TNG episode, because I watched this movie about 20-30 minutes in, I pause it, and I look at H. Marie, and I go, I am really mad right now, because this is actually good and enjoyable. This is the stuff that actually makes the movie fun to watch. And then it goes downhill. I guess we forgot that time that Geordi was abducted by the Romulans and had his visor modified so that he could, fall under their mind control to assassinate somebody. We didn't think to put in a security protocol to maybe stop that from happening, or see, oh look, the Klingons are, using it as a signal to spy on us. And then of course, there's the whole, they figured out the shield frequency. If only there was some kind of ability we learned when fighting the Borg. Oh, but that's when it hit me. That's when it hit me. Guys, you see, the problem is Riker is a tactical captain. So if we apply Star Trek Online logic, Riker couldn't rotate the shield frequency because he didn't have that ability. Okay, if I have to use a video game to reference your screw-ups and your obvious, the people who wrote Generations had no respect for the original canon or established lore. That's one of the other big complaints that people complain about New Trek, and it's all on display in this pile of shit movie.
you would think Worf would just be like, they went right through our shields, modulating.
Oh, where did this happen last time? Oh, gee, maybe when the Borg took a chunk of our hull out, and then we decided, oh, let's rotate our shield frequency. But nope, that ability was locked because, you know, the engineer captain was on the surface, so they couldn't do it.
Actually, I'm pretty sure Picard is science captain.
Picard is definitely science pilot, absolutely. That's why the pilot maneuvers on the Sovereign are so appropriate. Or the pilot seating on the Sovereign is so appropriate. But it's so much that goes wrong. And then, okay, we stop Soren. So did Soren get pulled out of the Nexus again? Or did he get... And what's really sad is you've got, like, 3 acting legends, but we don't need to see them in a fist fight. The geezer brawl is not cool. This is what makes people make fun of Star Trek, is watching 3 old guys that should be in a battle of wit, arguing over strategy, not punching each other.
Well, the most important question I've always had about this movie, right? We know that both Kirk and Picard are accomplished riders that are pretty badass on the back of horses, right? And we know that they can pop out of the Nexus, and that presumably they can take stuff out of the Nexus.
Or leave stuff behind, because Kirk leaves his jacket.
Right. So, why didn't they take the horses?
That's what I said!
Like cavalry charge, man. Like, actually, let's be honest. They know they're going to leave the Nexus, right? They know that they're all set to do it. Before you go, grab a couple of phasers.
Go back a little bit further.
Yeah, right?
I almost feel like Nolan was making fun of this movie when he has I can't remember the actor's name who played Shinzon, ironically enough. Say the line, you know, you've got to remember to dream a little bigger, darling, and he pulls out a grenade launcher. That was exactly what I thought in this moment. It's like, you came back unarmed, and you could have had horses, you could have had swords, you could have had literally anything to stop him. And you probably could have even brought a whole ship with you if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, no, like, you know, like, go nuts, man. Like, bring in a freaking Enterprise and just drop, you know, like, bring in the OG Enterprise and just torpedo them from orbit.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it should have been done. They ride on horses, and then out of the Nexus comes the TOS Enterprise. It tractors the Enterprise D-saucer section to safety, and then they blow up Soren, and that's it. That is already a better ending than the crap we got, because if it's going to be stupid, this is what I was saying with the musical. If we're going to be dumb, let's make it frickin' count. And they didn't.
And it's such a shame because, that all being said, the first 20 minutes of this movie is not to be missed by any Star Trek fan. It is so good.
Exactly.
Very good, sir. Oh, they brought up their door. I'll be quiet.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
and like the emotional impact of the scene where Picard gets the news that his brother and his nephew are dead.
He spent his life thinking that he didn't have the responsibility to carry on the family name, and now he's like, oh shit.
Inadvertently.
That's powerful stuff.
Inadvertently. Because this was not their plan. Okay, you watch this movie and go, they didn't have any respect for what they were writing. The movie started writing with the scene where Kirk and Picard were together. That's where the plot begins its writing. And that's why this doesn't work. It's because it's a concept. It's a, let's get these characters together, and that's why it fails. Whereas if it's okay to do that, but you needed to really flesh out what you were going to do. And then on top of that, we put Picard through all of this trauma, which inadvertently justifies his character changes for the rest of the movies. Because in a matter of hours, he goes from finding out he's the last of his family line to his command being destroyed, and he gets to, bury Captain Kirk and report him dead again. Like, that's a lot of stuff to just put on anybody in general.
My favorite part is when he doesn't take enough rocks out for him to actually like scooch through with a reasonable thing, and Soren looks down and he's like, looking up, like, trying to crawl through, and he's stuck. Like,
Anyway, Corion, it sounds like you've got a thought though too, so we'll let you take it.
The problem with this movie to me is it feels very disjointed. It feels like this was written by committee, only instead of everyone agreeing on the final draft, they just all went, okay, we're going to go to our corners. You have this section from this section. You have this section from that section, and
You're
we'll
directing the
just
boat scene. You're directing the Nexus.
right. Like, and then when, once you're all done writing, we'll just all mash it together and hand it in, and that'll be the script. It doesn't feel like the writers talked to each other, or that they sat down and really thought about how they were going to pull this together, right? There were a lot of ways they could have pulled some very interesting pieces together. They could have had Soren upgrading that bird of prey with weapons that would make it a match for the Enterprise. So they don't have to do this BS Geordi visor nonsense, right? They could have, if you're going to have Lursa and B'Etor, absolutely have Lursa and B'Etor. They're fantastic characters to have, but you've got to use them just so. They've got to feel like, they almost have to feel like cringy flirting with you, right? Like you're kind of like, I get that they're into me, but I really don't want to tap that.
I really
right?
don't
Like,
want to be into.
Yeah. Like I really want them to find someone else. Thanks. Right.
Yeah. Don't really feel like going where every Klingon has gone before.
Right. If you want to have Data be playing around with the emotions, Scoglie hit on a really, really good idea. Have Data be on an away, or like on vacation, like on R&R,
There needs
when
to be
he's
some
doing it.
protocol for just such an unpredictable experiment like that. It just seems so astonishingly reckless with a character of his abilities and what he's proven to pull off in the past when he goes rogue. Like,
yeah, like, well, even have him on R&R when that occurs, and him being called back, like recalled to the ship before they can do anything about it, right? So that he's got to deal with it.
Addressed in some way, like they tried to. It just wasn't like, oh well, let's see what happens. Good luck, Commander. And he's like, oh.
Or at the very least, because there was the line where Geordi said, "If anything goes wrong, I'm going to turn it off." And it should have been like a lot more examples of how easy it would be for Geordi to turn it off. And then Data like taking actual steps to hide his shit.
Yeah, the next movie literally has him doing this number and it's off. And it's like, and this happened, we got that, it's no explanation. Okay, all right, because like I said, Generations is the end of Roddenberry's Star Trek. The Nexus, the rules are out the door. It doesn't matter at that point anymore, because that's if you accept magical bullshit Nexus, then that's why it's funny when I hear people say, "Oh, 2017 on Trek is bad," and it's like, yeah, you're right, but then they'll go, "Oh, but 2005 and Enterprise and Voyager, oh, they're really great," and I'm like, yeah, but they also take place in their own kind of timeline, because Roddenberry Trek is over by that point. It's like I said, the second the TNG crew is killed on screen, the second the past is destroyed, that's it. There's no, that's where it all starts, and from there, that's where we snowball into the Enterprise timeline.
Going off the rails.
Well, and that's just it. In the next movie, we already create the Enterprise timeline right out of the gate with the whole thing with the Borg. And then we find out that because of the temporal Cold War and because of, events that did it, but it's okay. And that's the other point that people need to realize, is it's okay. We are very far away from the TOS timeline happening in our lifetime, okay? Because CVN 65, the actual USS Enterprise, was destroyed in 1995 during the Eugenics Wars. That didn't happen in our lifetime, as far as we know. There's a book out there that explains how the Eugenics Wars could have happened behind the scenes, and it's a fascinating read, but there's still key details of the TOS timeline that we've already gotten away from. Strange New Worlds, same thing. They had a new event that takes place in that timeline, and they pushed off the Eugenics Wars. So it's its own thing. And that's okay, because it doesn't change anything. Unless they destroy every copy of the original series, unless they destroy every copy of TOS Season 4, it doesn't change anything. And it just means that we get more fans to get excited for the Star Trek we love about.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I also don't particularly... Okay, I think the biggest sin that Trek ever committed in terms of what happened in the writers' room was deciding to put definitive dates behind things. Because if they had kept all the dates ambiguous as to when they start, right? Like if we were told in the past the eugenics wars happen and then World War III happens, and then we get, the Vulcans coming down and how, after our first warp jump or whatever, right? Like if we had that as the timeline and it was all put in star dates because they just don't use the old calendar and we don't have a reference for what the calendars would sync up to,
Yeah.
it would be fine.
Lack
And no
of
one would
context.
complain. But because they keep having to shift the timelines because it's not quite meeting up to the technology points they figure we're going to hit, because
Well-
they're writers, they're not technicians,
That's just
we
it,
get
though.
the problems we get.
TOS inadvertently rewrote its own future. Inadvertently rewrote its own past because of its influence. The flip phone was inspired by the communicator in Star Trek. A lot of our technological advancements in modern day communication and how, now we actually have full-on encyclopedias on cloud servers that we can access. That's literally computer, cross-reference, this date with that. And it's like, we have that now. So that means that it's going to shift, and that's why Enterprise looks a little bit different than what you expect, but it still works because it's just its own timeline, and it's its own thing, and it's okay if it does its own thing, because you're right, Trek does have to adapt to the modern audience in order to be successful. Here's the other thing. If we were to do a show that sticks to the Roddenberry Bible, I'm going to be honest, I don't foresee it lasting more than 2 seasons before all of these legacy diehard fans, or a lot of them, start complaining that it's, we've already seen it before. Yeah, and that. So
Well-
it just leads me back to the same conclusion. Go watch the Star Trek you love if you're not happy with the stuff you like. And then come back and offer legit criticism in the form of you want to see it improve. I cannot agree with any person who wants to call themselves a Star Trek fan but wants to burn the brand down. That is the dumbest thing. That's taking poison and hoping that other people die. That's basically what that is. You're shooting down
Oh,
the
voodoo?
opportunity. Huh?
So voodoo? You take the poison and other people die?
No, that's taking the poison and hoping other people die. It doesn't work that way. It never will.
So optimistic voodoo?
No, let's keep giving legit criticism, and because we've seen them change. Objectively speaking, if you take art objectively and you hang your bias and you look at it, the Strange New World season 2 was overall a decent season. There's at least 8 episodes out of this season that were really good. One that was okay, and another I don't ever want to talk about again. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, I'm still going to say that Strange New Worlds was like a solid 6 out of 7 season, right? Like, I did enjoy it. It had some low points, and, there were some points where I'm like, God, writers, I want to like you, and if you had just made some minor changes, I would have been down, but man, you played with things that I know can't work.
Yep.
Right?
William Shatner
And-
just hits it out of the park.
I feel like Generations does that a lot too.
Yeah, Generations has a lot of great
Well-
moments, and it's why a lot of fans overlook it, and I see why. But then they overlook it for the same reason that fans overlook, the problems in, like, Picard Season 3 and whatnot. I'll freely admit, it was a fan service season. That was my expectation that I set going into it. You can go back and check, but I have not changed my stance or perspective on Picard Season 3, because I was at the point where things were so bad. Just show me you understand what you're doing. And as it turns out, Terry's a huge TNG fan, and he gave us, with Star Trek, what we should have got with Star Wars. So, and that's, that's what it comes down to. And that's really, like I said, at the end of the day, I think what needs to happen is everyone needs to look at Generations, and we can all come to the collective, agreement that, what? This is where the Roddenberry book is closed permanently. And if we want to go back to a Roddenberry-style Star Trek, we can try it, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's going to be successful. The Roddenberry model is a proven failure. TOS was canceled after 3 seasons. The motion picture, while it is one of my favorite Star Trek movies, did flop in the theater. It just didn't hit the landing. Probably because they should have gone with the director's cut, but that's another discussion. And TNG had to make changes in Season 3 to attract a wider audience. That's just the nature of things. Star Trek has to evolve. Star Trek has to change if you want people to, new people to experience Star Trek. They're not going to experience it the way that we did. That's a fact. Watching DS9 now with John, I realized that the whole reason that I even got to this point was because I had to learn to respect the fact that his experience is going to be brought in a different way, and it's going to be unique to him, and that's fine. Not everybody needs to experience Star Trek the way that I do, or the way that Corione does, or Scogli, or John, even, or even you watching this. Every way, the way that we experience and what we get out of the art is the whole reason we do this show, so we can have fun with it. Burning down the brand is not acceptable because then we can't talk about it, and I'm not okay with that. So that's why I don't agree with that strategy, and that's why, and of course, that strategy is now turning into just the typical anti-woke, loudmouth equivalent that basically needs to be reminded, no, you need to either, if you want to be a part of the discussion, you need to accept that this is just what it is. It's okay. Like, this is why I respect the 735 Club. While I also think they're wrong, because they count a few more episodes than they probably should, I respect the fact that they take their hard line and they have their reasons. That's not what I'm arguing against. It's okay to have a hard line. It's not okay to root for our brand to burn down, because you're also rooting for careers to end, and you're also rooting for actors to have to go find work and set designers to have to go find work. And those people don't deserve that. They've shown up. Visually speaking, if we put these on mute and just ad-libbed our own dialogue, they would probably be still passable shows, and maybe even improved if we gave it our own dialogue and reshaped scenes. It's not a bad idea. But this is the moment right here where it all goes to shit. This is the end of Roddenberry Trek, is Generations. And that is my hard line with Star Trek, is if you want to give me the, real Star Trek, then if you say that anything after Generations is still real Star Trek, which in a way it is, but if you say it's Roddenberry Trek, no, you're wrong. And that's that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there are definitely episodes and there are definitely movies after this that capture the appropriate Roddenberry feel.
I
feel
agree.
like
I agree that they are, I would call them respectful homages and proper nods to the creation and the origin.
Yeah. And I would also say that, look, Roddenberry, the Roddenberry system as a concept is fantastic. I think that the problem is the application requires a lot of creativity to make it work, right? Having a certain amount of conflict among crew members is needed, because you can't have none.
No,
but you can have minimal amounts, right?
Yeah.
And when there is a conflict, you have a discussion about it, right? Like, it's I disagree, let's sit down and talk it out stuff is totally fine, right? I have a disagreement and I'm going to deck you is not.
No.
Right? So we've got to take it in that direction, right? We have to sit down and go, okay, guys, this is the pieces that do work. These are the pieces that we have to keep in mind when we're writing scenes that are close to the line. And that, I think, is honestly what Deep Space Nine did absolutely the best, is they went right up to the line and danced on it. And owned the fact that they were dancing on it.
Yeah. Dahlia Lightwood writes in, Trek never did anything to anger me as bad as Star Wars did. Every Trek series had its own charm, and even Voyager had its kind of mess, but it had its great moments too. I will see your comment and raise you Star Trek Discovery Seasons 1 and 2. If you didn't see those, you're probably better off. Season 1, I actually did show promise. Season 2, anyway, we don't need to get into that. As far as Voyager goes, you're right. It does have some good moments, and I do appreciate those, but to me, Voyager is starting to age like milk, whereas DS9 is like a fine top-shelf wine. Dahlia says, and Disney don't even get me started. Their brand deserves to burn down. I agree, and if they sell Lucasfilm to Apple, that'll be acceptable. I just don't agree with burning down. What I mean by burning down the brand is like Star Trek as a brand. If we want to pull Secret Hideouts license, try to give it to somebody else, fine. Prove to me that they can. But at this point, I think the way that what needs to happen is Disney was on the right track with Star Wars Visions. They failed to capitalize on this opportunity and make some good shows based off of it. But what needs to happen is every studio that wants to take a legacy IP like Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever and own it, you need to send your audition tapes. You need to show us what you're going to do with the show, why you think you're going to preserve the IP and take it in a direction that's good and positive. You need to prove yourself. And spoiler alert, guys, Apple's already proven themselves. Silo is the greatest television show ever made. And so if Apple gets Star Trek and Star Wars, then we're just going to become the Apple brothers at that point.
Actually, guys, I'm going to say that you guys may think it started with Star Wars Visions. It didn't. The first company to do this, believe it or not, was Games Workshop with the Warhammer franchise into video games. Because what they literally did was they gave anybody at all, who figured that they could make a Warhammer video game the opportunity to have a small section of the license. So, for example, they'd say to these guys, okay, you can use this chapter of Space Marines and this bad guy, and you can set it in this timeline, go, right? And they let everybody have their own little piece of it. And the studios that were successful got bigger pieces of the pie, and the ones that failed did not get another slice. And they kept doing that until now they've got a core group of like 5 or 6 studios that really know what they're doing with that franchise, that have really embraced the lore, and we're getting top quality stuff from it.
Oh,
Yeah.
the lore in Warhammer is so deeply compelling. If you're not interested in playing the game or whatever, check out a YouTuber called Lutin09, I think it is, Lutin. He's got this like 120 video list, like what is Warhammer, and he just goes through the lore from the beginning. It is fascinating.
Right. And the point is, though, that is what Star Wars should have done.
Yeah.
Star Wars should have gone and said, like, okay, you can tell the following stories in this little neck of the woods. You can tell these other stories. And then put them all up on Disney Plus and just watch the ratings. And whoever got the better ratings got to do more.
Yeah, no.
Whoever got the better ratings got to tee up the movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's what these shows, like, it's annoying because I found out recently that Disney is, like, really losing a ton of money on Disney Plus, and it's 1, because they oversaturated, and 2, because now they're undersaturating, and 3, they just don't understand streaming. And it's like streaming and basically everything, it's moderation. And when you're in charge of the content, you're the moderator. You have to turn it up or turn it down. And what's the best way to do that? Competing shows. You don't have to tell the fans that these shows are competing. Instead, you just tell the writers, like, you guys will get a box office feature based on your view count on your show.
Yeah.
Here is your show.
Yeah.
And that's moderated content times 1 billion, because you literally control all of the regulation. You're the NFL of streaming.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to from literal trash to the golden goose of Star Trek, in my opinion. Now, while I just said that all that Roddenberry Trek is officially over, I do agree with that, because DS9 is a deconstruction of TOS and TNG, but it's a proper, respectful deconstruction in that it shows where the issues are trying to preserve Paradise, but it also paves the way for how to get there because of Cisco. Cisco is probably the best example of what a Federation starship captain would behave in these circumstances. And boy, are we just get started. But of course, John, you have done 3 seasons of Deep Space Nine. We watched Generations, which you were probably like, what the hell does that have to do with this? And then you watched The Way of the Warrior. So why don't you go ahead and tell us how you feel so far?
So I've been saving this all night. Generations is still my favorite Star Trek movie.
Oh, God.
There's so
It's
much
the
good in it,
one
though, at the
time
same time.
Star Trek had abandoned this like strict code to, we're gonna pretend like we understand science, whereas like Futurama always just abandoned it while also still staying within the science. So it could have been done. And so for me, Generations is like one of the few films where I was like, oh, Star Trek does have a little Star Wars in it. And that was the thing that brought me into Star Trek, was the little bit of Star Wars. Like, okay, they really are trying really hard for realism, real science. I can respect that. I'm glad they can also do a little Star Wars. And then after watching Generations, it was years later, but then I watched, season 4 of TOS and watched more Star Wars, where Spock, becomes brought back to life. Like, Gene Roddenberry wasn't exactly afraid of doing a little fantasy in his sci-fi.
That's why I give people a hard time who complain about, Picard getting a robot body, and I'm like, okay, so Picard transferring his consciousness into a robot. You're right. It's a bit, it might not even be possible. We don't know. It hasn't successfully been tried as far as we know in this lifetime. But I just want to make sure you're bothered by that. But Spock dying, having his body sent to magical Genesis planet, getting body reanimated from scratch and aging up perfectly fast at just the right speed.
He stores his soul in Dr. McCoy.
Puts his soul in Dr. McCoy, gets his new body, then his soul gets transferred from McCoy to... Seriously?
So a little kid, and then he just
Seriously?
grows up like super fast because of reasons.
Anyway.
He peaks right back to the age he was at the beginning of the series.
What luck!
And also has to be dealing with the turmoil of also not being the man who experienced any of the things he remembers experiencing. So it's like...
It's technically new Spock.
Yeah,
but is it new Spock because his soul, but also his soul is the one having the issue. Because
Dude, the emergency
Gene Roddenberry recognizes the soul.
Emergency replacement Spock. Yeah. All right. So for Generations, my fan canon explanation as to why none of the Nexus is actually real and none of that actually happened the way it did is Q bullshit. But that's a fan canon. That doesn't excuse the movie for the pile of shit that it is. But you know what? It's your favorite. Is it still your favorite?
Yeah, mostly just the nostalgia. Like, it
Fair.
always was the open, like, as far as gateway drugs go,
Mexican Iron Man
the
loves
gateway
Star
drug.
Wars Episode 2. I guess, for that reason I can, and that's actually kind of why I like Star Wars Episode 2 is the nostalgia, so. All right, so. Way of the Warrior.
So then moving into Way of the Warrior, for me, this one was like...
Because you're talking about Star Wars, or Star Trek going Star Wars,
Well, so this is everything I've been complaining about. Like, it's actually really nice to watch DS9 do exactly what I asked it to do, which was escalate in terms of your opponents to the point that, like, the Defiant is one of the few ships that can actually take in space, like, damage. Like, the whole thing about spaceships is they're meant to be so light that they can travel at these insane speeds, but they also, like, need to be exactly enough. But the Defiant's like, no, we friggin' put armor on this thing. And it was like, okay, we're upgrading. Not to mention the end. When Deep Space Nine goes off, it had one of my favorite things about the military, which is the importance of order. And the reason where he goes, fire all even missile silos, fire all odd missile silos, and it's this like ordered explosion. But then like he's still not getting it. He's like, all right, fire all phasers, because those aren't going to destroy. They're just going to whittle down shields. Give him a chance to pause. He's still not pausing. All right, just kill him.
I don't have it.
And then just, for 8 ships down, 1 to go. As soon as he says let him go, it's like the difference between order and trained precision.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely felt like one of, like when Cisco goes fire at will, like, it does kind of feel like he's saying like, all right, I tried, like I tried to settle this cool, but you refused to be cool about this. Now it's on.
It's so cool to see the station light up. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, 5,000 photon torpedoes. I remember hearing that when I was a kid. I was unimpressed, but now I'm looking at it going, no, that's like 5,000 mini nuclear weapons right there. That's not a or clean nukes, I should say. That's not a small amount of firepower, and then plus all the phaser bays. Like DS9 basically got the Defiant treatment. Now it's a station, so we got a little ship that's just basically armor and teeth that now lives in a nest of armor and teeth.
Yeah.
It looks like 3 giant teeth from the pylons. So yeah, it's narratively it makes sense.
I mean, like, I just love that O'Brien, like, you can imagine, like, since the Jem'Hadar, like, since the Dominion became a thing, O'Brien's been sitting there, like, going, like, no, I'm retrofitting the hell out of this place.
That moment the Klingons back out of the Khitomer Accords, it's just like, oh, shit.
Yep.
That's where
Well, it's funny because it was like that was the thing holding them back from warning the Cardassians, and they were like, "Get them on the line."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I you know, like that kind of back end diplomacy is like one of the things I love Deep Space Nine for, because, you know, they're more than willing to do that kind of backhanded diplomacy. You know, that kind of, we're not gonna tell them, we're just gonna have a conversation in an environment where spies are sure to hear us and just see how things play out, right?
Well, dude, that's the kind of thing that, like, I think destroyed DS9 in the 90s, was because people were like, that's not how it works. Spies are James Bond. They go to the parties and they just watch from afar. They don't participate. They don't let another enemy just listen to the whole plan. And then now, in modern times, we watch modern spy flicks, and it's like they're all best friends, but they're not. But they are, and they respect each other, but they hate. I thought they were fighting, but they keep shaking hands and eating dinner together and charging each other's company cards. What is going on? Suddenly, DS9 looks 100% on the money, and it's like, yeah, it's way before its time.
Garrett gets his best line of the entire series in this episode. I got a couple cutting remarks off that'll stick with them, do the damage forever or whatever.
Yeah.
My wounds have healed, but my remarks
the
will...
damage to their egos will last a lifetime.
Oh, and we get one of the greatest conversations in Star Trek history with comparing the Federation to root beer. You know, it's all bubbly and happy, but then you keep drinking it and you start to like it. You know, it's insidious, just like the Federation, just like some people I know. No,
actually, my favorite piece of this whole thing is Dukat and Garrick fighting Klingons in this like tight corridor, and they're just having this conversation, and I'm like, that is the most Cardassian thing that could have happened.
Garrick walks up to him, just levels the phaser right at him, and he's like, turns around, is like,
And well, the best part is, like, they're having this fight, and it's like, you know, I find this hand-to-hand combat most distasteful, right? Like, they're having this polite conversation as only Cardassians can in the middle of, like, a hand-to-hand frenzied nonsense.
Andrew Robinson.
In fact, that whole boarding
Mark
sequence... Yeah. You know, on top of that, like, that whole boarding sequence is just fantastically done. Like, I love that, like, you know, they beam Klingons into ops, and, like, half the crew is in this desperate hand-to-hand struggle, and Worf looks like he's having the time of his life. Dax looks like she's having the time of her life, right? Like, you know, Nerys is in, like, this crazy knife fight, which is totally what you would expect from her, right?
Dude, Dax's line to Worf when they're like, if you're having trouble, like, taking it easy on me because I'm a girl, don't worry. I've been a man a couple times before. I was like, that's such a boss thing to say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, look. You know, I joke around saying that she's like Rambo Barbie through the entire series. And, you know, it tracks, man, because this is like a fantastic episode for Dax. Really, anytime you put Klingons and Dax in the same room, good shit's gonna happen. And, you know, they do that flawlessly here. They've got, you know, so many perfect moments, you know, where, like, for example, when Sisko's picking everyone up after the boarding action, and he, like, picks up O'Brien, he's like, are you okay? And O'Brien's like, yeah, I think so. He goes, good, get the shields online.
Yeah.
Right? Like, good, get back to work. Right? Like,
Pretty much.
yeah, and it tracks, man. Everybody's character is just on point. All right. I mean, anytime you throw Gul Dukat on and allow him to chew on the scenery, he's great for it. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I love the character of Martok. I think the character of Martok was just perfect here.
Oh, that conversation with Worf, that was so good.
Oh yeah, and
Worf just lets him have it. He's just like,
yeah. Well, the other one I really love is, when they tell him like, you can't go and attack Cardassia, and Martok's like, what do you want us to do? Turn around and go home? Like, screw that.
Yes. That's exactly what
it's like. What do you want us to do?
Leave a ship or two here if you want, because we don't know when shit's coming through the wormhole. But this isn't your jurisdiction. Okay. Allies doesn't mean you have free reign to just come in our territory and bolster military units where you feel like. No, you forgot. Okay, first of all, what you need to do is you need to take all of your ships. You need to go back to Kronos, okay? And then what you need to do is you need to contact the Federation Council, and what you're looking for is Standard Form 1717. And what Standard Form 1717 dictates is how many military units you want to move across Federation space. Now, for every 20 light years, for every ship,
stop you right there.
You're going to need a new form.
That conversation, Martok's putting you through a window, dude.
Yeah,
he's literally gonna just yeet you through something. Because
Spock just high-fived you.
We didn't get the SF-1717. Right? Why are you guys here? You're here illegally. You need to go back. You didn't put in your transit request. Okay. Yeah, we know it takes 20 years to get approved. We're doing the best we can. Not really.
You didn't fill out your T, O, and E, so back you go. Yeah.
Exactly. Wait, you made a stop at Ryza? That wasn't on your flight plan. You're going to have to submit it. Go back to Kronos and submit all over again. That's because they're allies. Allies does not equal members. And that's like saying to your neighbor, hey, neighbor, we're going to watch each other's back, right? So, like, if certain bad guys, whether they be posing as government goons or just whatever, try to infiltrate your house, I'm going to get your back. All right, so I'm sitting here, hanging out, doing my thing on my show. My door opens and my neighbor comes in. It's like, what are you doing? Greetings from your neighbor. I brought some casserole and I'm going to eat it in your house. And I'm going to hang out and see what you're doing. And I'm like, no, you're not. Our friendship was not an invitation to come into my home domain. You've invaded my space.
And you know what? I will also say about these episodes? Even Bashir gets off a fantastic one-liner when he's talking to Dukat, and Dukat's like, I find this whole procedure offensive. And Bashir just turns up, I find you offensive. Now give me your damn arm. Right?
Exactly.
I find you offensive.
Dahlia Lightwood says, one of my favorite Star Trek scenes ever. Look up nasty Klingon foods. I still laugh over this scene. It's not recalling off of my, so I'll have to look it up after the show. But yeah, thanks for the tip. So yeah,
I love
John.
Worf's line there.
So do you see?
Like, what about my honors? That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like straight up, right?
So what did you think, John? You're building up the season. Now do you see after the first episode or first two episodes of season 4, which basically combined to make the Deep Space Nine movie? What do you feel that we oversold it?
No, and that's the nice thing about it, but I do understand why it flopped back in the day, and it's because one of the biggest things is our community, especially the one we're creating now, couldn't have existed in the 90s.
Probably not.
Gene Roddenberry, even what he was writing, that's everything we love. If he was writing that today, we'd be like, yeah, let's go, put it out there. But even today, it's the big media execs going no, people don't want war movies. People don't want Star Wars. And it's who are you to decide that? And they're like, well, I just kind of am over it. And it's well, do you even go to the movies? And they're like, no, I don't have much time. So I haven't seen a new movie in a while. I've just seen a lot of trailers and I'm tired of the Star Wars trailers. And it's dude, get out of the job that is in charge of bringing us new cool stuff, because that's what I mean by putting creatives in charge. Whoever took over Star Trek for DS9, that order of changing hands, that's how it's done. That's where the you're giving somebody the torch. They're like, hey, I actually am going to continue making good Star Trek. You guys cool with that? Yeah. All right, bet. And then you go. Whereas like whatever is going on right now, it's like, hey, we're going to try and make cool Star Wars. You guys are going to love it. You guys have to love it. Please don't hate it. If you hate it, you're a monster. We hate you too. Wait, why aren't you watching our show? And it's like, you're just watching us watch your video rather than just creating a good video. And I think that's where DS9, like, that's why I know, like, I've always known that you guys liked it for good reason. And that's something I've learned while doing this podcast and just while studying the entertainment industry. Cult classics, the things that live forever, are the ones that actually go as far as they can. They're not just the ones that, like, walk into the room and attempt to give the audience what the audience wants and is sad if the audience disagrees. Instead, they're the ones that are like, no, I know exactly what a good movie is. Give me some money. Let me make it. All right. Told you. And then they go on and they keep making movies. Look at Christopher Nolan. Like, he was like, I know exactly what a good Batman looks like. And look at what he did to DC. Like, he didn't make Batman of DC. He didn't make a movie that DC fans were going to love. He made Batman the way he knew Batman should be portrayed, and it was awesome. But then the same thing happened in the inverse when Suicide Squad came out, and they were like, we know exactly what the people want when they want the Joker. We know exactly what they want. And everybody was like, get that demon ugly thing off our screen. This movie's dead to us. And it was literally that. It was like, we know what you want. No, you don't. Yes, we do. And then you don't. Rather than being like, wait, here's what we think you want. Oh, that's not? Okay, cool. Thanks for the feedback. We'll come back with something new. Like, that's what Sonic did. Sonic was like, whoa, they do not like the teeth and they do not like the shoes. And then they brought back Sonic. Like, that's called pivoting. It's not a sign of your failure. It's not a sign that you shouldn't be writing. It's not a sign that, like, you deserve to be fired. It's a sign that you can listen and adapt to the people in real time rather than yelling at them.
It's a lesson that just doesn't seem to have been learned. Like, it's so weird because it was so effective in that case. And, like,
but dude, the worst part is it has been learned. Like, SNW is a perfect example. Season 2 learned from so many mistakes of season 1, whereas everything Star Wars since season 1 of SNW has just gotten progressively worse, including Mando.
Yep.
Whereas true. Like season 2 of Mando versus season 2 of SNW, it's like, come on, SNW, look at what Mando's done. But in the interim, season 3 of Mando plummeted, and season 2 was like, guys, we learned from our mistakes. And they didn't say anything. Like, what's his name? Kurtzman hasn't been bragging about this one either.
He's been quiet since, I think since about the failure of Picard season 2, which is why, as douchebag Kylo has previously referenced on this show, you know, Kennedy was like, you know, Emperor Palpatine, but Kurtzman was Professor Chaos, because he was like, you know, he wanted to make it a platform for people to say that. Okay, that's an ambiguous statement. That doesn't mean a platform for a specific ideology. It just so happens that the people he appointed to in writers' positions and whatnot just so happen to be those types of ideologues. What he's really talking about is, I want to get the stuff out there that's going to make money. That's what he was trying to really say and get after. And because, you know, the culture's changing on the internet, because it is more opinionated, we're going to have stuff that's going to be a bit more ideological, but we need a more balancing of ideas. And you have to, as I keep saying, you have to respect your audience. It does not matter what controversial opinions you have. You have to respect your audience. Let me give you an example. Dahlia Lightwood, who's been just a wonderful contributor to this channel in the fact that she shows up and graces our comment section with insight and just personal perspective. Everything that we want in all of our viewers, that's basically what Dahlia Lightwood helps to do. And especially, and the Nemesis of Eden is another good example when he's able to give us more time and share more ideas. I don't agree with either of you either of them on everything. I've had disagreements specifically with Dahlia involving certain conspiracy theories. But you know what? I don't want to impart or to force my ideas onto somebody if they don't want to hear them. So I'm going to be free in talking about certain ideas, but if a conversation topic just isn't really resonating or it's not going that way, I'm not going to force the issue. I used to do that when I was a kid. I used to think that my opinion was the correct opinion and that everybody else who had not my opinion was wrong and I needed to have contempt for them. I've now had that thrown back in my face in the form of several different people, and wow. My point is, that's where you have to respect your audience. Notice how Dahlia still comes back. You know why? Because I don't make Dahlia feel insecure, or at least I try not to, and if I have, I'm sorry. I don't make her feel bad for having her own opinions that are different from mine. Just like I don't make Corione do it or feel that way, or John. I bust your balls about it because it's fun to make fun of the old guard mentality of doing that, but I'm not doing that to make you guys feel bad because you have an opinion. We're doing it to have fun, because we respect each other, because we're about restoring respect into discourse. And that's the mistake that Kurtzman made, was he didn't hire people who were respectful. It doesn't matter how crazy the woke message gets. It matters how it's presented, and that's why people don't listen to it, is because they come at you with this whole, oh, you know, only women are oppressed in the system. Well, the reason Barbie's doing well is because, yeah, they're taking that stance, but then they're taking it to the extreme satirical stance that it is, and then they're also showing that you know, one sex or another controlling the society is actually not of anyone's benefit. It's better when we work together as a team. And that's why we love Star Trek, because Star Trek does a great job of taking people of all different backgrounds and lifestyles. And of course, we see that best represented in Deep Space Nine because of the conflict that we're allowed to have, because of the uniqueness with the Bajoran situation. And then Dahlia Lightwood says, because you're not talking conspiracies, I'm here for movies, writing, art talk. Exactly, and that's what this particular show, the Tuesday show, is specifically dedicated to. We do want to do more talk shows and stuff that's a bit more open-ended on talk stuff, but those are going to be shows that are specific to that, and they're going to be labeled for that stuff. That's why, you know, we have the Rogue Council, for example, on Corione's channel for that stuff. Yes, the Tuesday show, you are pretty much mostly always going to get movies, games, and shows, and if it's relevant to the topic of the time, we'll talk about it and mention it, but ultimately, this is your escapism place. This isn't your, we're gonna lecture you on everything you need to be doing better with your life. Unless you really want us to, but not unless you ask for it. That's basically how it works.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I you know, I don't think it's any secret that the way we would like to do it is have a series of channels with a lot of options for you guys, so that we cover the topics that we want to do, but two, we think will appeal to a wide base, so that, you know, we can cover off your entertainment needs on YouTube as best we can. And hopefully that works for you guys. And, you know, if something isn't working, we'd love to hear it.
Yep. Absolutely. Because while I am opinionated and I hold my views very strongly, that's for me. That doesn't mean, like my disagreeing with you does not actually affect your existence in any way, shape, or form. It's a crazy notion, but I don't have any actual real power except to remind people that they don't have power over me. Other than that, I don't control anybody. It's that simple. But anyway, getting a little off of it. Oh, Dahlia says, you can talk aliens all you want, fictional or real ones. I'm up for talking, a UFO talking. Yeah, UFOs and aliens are fun. And you can talk about conspiracies and men in hot space armor kicking ass. I like that. Or, excuse me, not conspiracies. He said spaceships. Yeah, no, there's plenty of that on this channel, I promise. It's not any of us, of course, but we, you know, we don't care. We're happy to accommodate any way we can.
I actually care very much. I'm bummed that I don't own any space armor.
Well, and that's why we need to grow this channel, so that we can monetize it, so that we can indulge in our cosplays and actually armor. No. When this channel monetizes, I promise we'll try to make it worth your money as best we can. But with that, we are pretty much down to the end of the show. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you especially to Dahlia and everybody else who tuned in. I believe Nemesis of Eden, you stopped by. Eddie Art, thank you for popping in. And Disney Sheepherder, of course. We do appreciate, and then of course correcting our sound issues. We also appreciate that as well. I also want to thank, we need to thank our podcast listeners when we get back to keeping up with our podcast, but I think we need to have a conversation about that behind the scenes to see if it's even worthwhile. As far as being on YouTube, this podcast is not going away for at least another 10 years. If we're still under 500 subscribers in 10 years, we'll probably have a conversation and probably sunset the channel. And at which point, that'll be a sad day, but not for a long time, at least.
But today is not that day.
Today, yeah. The day may come when the Ryder Brothers will go off the air, and I'll hopefully be long dead when that happens, but we'll see. And by long dead, I mean, after I'm 140, if I'm able to play video games still. That's really the only reason. If I get to a point where I can't play video games, that's when I know it's my time.
Pull the plug.
Exactly. Next week, we may be taking
That's when we finally cut the stream. Oh, guys, he's not playing anymore.
Yeah. Dahlia Lightwood says, wear hot space armor and you'll get subscribers. We are thinking of doing theme nights. We've done a year of just casual showing up, and while we do like that, it would be fun to actually, especially with if we actually get into it starting in the holidays in October, and basically do like costumes for October, and then...
Well, Dahlia, will you settle for wizard robes? Because I've got like a closet back there.
I've got a robe. I got a pretty slick robe.
Hey, you guys want to see my lightsaber? There it is. Yeah, no, we're actual fans. Oh, and then of course there is my space dock. That's another one I like to have. I should just have these like just dangling on little fishing lines in front of my camera, and then I can just change them out. And and then just have the ship sitting right there. Because I mean, I sit over here in frame anyway.
Well,
so.
Dahlia says wizard robes works too. Dahlia, if you sub into the channel, I will start wearing the wizard robe on channel.
Yep. No, and I might even, remake my Jedi robes that I've lost from so many years ago. So, yeah, all great suggestions, Dahlia, because you're right. If we did start doing more theme stuff, there's only so much that, a hat and glasses that literally 90% of other YouTubers wear is going to go. So, a little bit of nuance is absolutely welcome here, especially from someone as fascinating as you. Dahlia Lit says, I'm already subscribed to the channel. Get your robe, dude. Next episode.
Next episode.
I'm Peter York of the Ryder Brothers, and we will see you probably in a couple of weeks. This has been a presentation of the Ryder Brothers Tuesday Night Live Show. The Ryder Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.